The Dave Hooker Show. A presentation of Off the Hook Sports. Objective insight, expertise, top guests. Available on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the Off the Hook Sports app. Download now for free. Also available on offthehooksports.com.
I compute and obey.
Now to Dave Hooker.
Ready.
Here we go. It is a Thursday. Josh Ward will join us for a fantastic conversation. Gambling picks as well. Today's tough question involves recruiting and more. Tennessee, South Carolina, the Vols' most important game of the year for recruiting purposes. I'm going to take it a step further after our 3:45 a.m. meeting. I think it's even more important than that. And also a top offensive line prospect, considering Tennessee cancels his trip to Oklahoma and will take an unofficial visit to the Vols this weekend. Is that a big deal? I'll go ahead and answer that. The answer is an absolute yes. Caleb, you ready to get rolling this morning?
Let's get rolling, Dave.
Let's absolutely do it. And it starts with what the H?
What the? What was he thinking?
Release the hounds.
The Dave Hooker Show.
Keep cool.
A presentation of offthehooksports.com.
All right, so five-star offensive tackle Jordan Seaton has canceled his official visit to Oklahoma this weekend. Will visit Tennessee instead. That according to Josh Newberg. Seaton also plans to take an official visit with the Vols later this fall. You ask if this was a big deal. I will say this is a monster deal. I think it is absolutely huge. And I think the fact that you would take an unofficial instead of an official to any school is a big, big deal, especially South Carolina. This isn't Georgia, which sometimes you'll see prospects change their plans because of premier games. So let's say Tennessee, Alabama last year, I could see somebody doing this and rescheduling their official visit to Oklahoma. But I think Tennessee is in good with another offensive lineman, and they're in good with a lot of offensive linemen, which I want to get to. How big of a deal is this, do you believe, for Tennessee in the recruiting world, Caleb Calhoun?
I'm with you. I think this is a huge deal. And you're right. People would bring up that, it's because it's not like this is the Tennessee-Alabama game that they're canceling Oklahoma-Iowa State for. It's this Tennessee-South Carolina game, which is a big deal from the perspective of the two schools, but it's not a game that stops the national college football world. You know what I mean? So he's doing this for an unofficial visit. And for the record, Jordan Seaton tweeted out in response an interesting line, which is he said, "The only orange I like," when he mentioned.
Oh.
So now I know Oklahoma's not orange, but that eliminates a lot of.
But it's made up of, if you go back to your combination of colors in elementary school, it's kind of made up of red. Orange is made up of what? Red and yellow. So maybe sort of. No, I'm reaching.
I learned that from watching Barney. Okay, sorry.
Okay, so let's take a look at this for a second. I want you to break down and pull up all the schools he's looking at. And I know you know off the top of your head. But first, let's take a look at Tennessee's class, okay? Because I want to use this as a backdrop. Andre Carrick didn't work, okay? Andre Carrick as a transfer to the SEC did not work. I know he came from Texas. It didn't work. Was he a cast-off? Not willing to go that far, but it hasn't worked. You're going to have to be good on the offensive line through high school recruiting, not the transfer portal. I believe that, and I don't believe John Campbell's been great either. I believe that more than any other position. So look at where Tennessee stands right now, this visit notwithstanding. Bennett Warren, 4-star offensive tackle out of Texas, 6'7.5", 330 pounds. Those are kids that are coming out of college, coming out of high school, ready to play in college physically. As far as the other ones that Tennessee has, Max Anderson, an offensive tackle, again, Texas, 4-star, Frisco, Texas. Those are 2 4-star offensive linemen that Tennessee has lined up. If you add this young man to the mix, boy, you've got something special brewing on your offensive line. And as somebody told me, within Tennessee's football program, you need the guys like Cade Mays that step on campus, and he was ready to play at Georgia. He was ready to play when he transferred to Tennessee. The guy was ready to play in high school. Those are the guys you need. You don't need the guys, no offense, Ollie Lane. You don't need the guys that you have to grow into players. Now, can you take an occasional Cooper Mays who has to gain weight before he's ready because he plays with tenacity? Absolutely. And look what he's become, an all-SEC player. But when I look at this kind of move by this young man who's willing to go to Tennessee, I think it says a couple of things. I think it says that Tennessee's coaches are saying, you got a chance to play, and you got a chance to play right away because this offensive line is struggling. Who all else is he looking at? Please hit the like and subscribe button. We love it when people are waiting there in the morning. Absolutely appreciate you beyond words. Be sure and support our sponsors. And this recruiting update is brought to you by Andy Mason, AndyMasonRealEstate.com. Real estate experts, over 4 decades combined experience. Again, they're right below. Support our sponsors, best prices and best service. It's that simple. If you go with anybody but Andy Mason in Knoxville, you're crazy. All right. As a matter of fact, our own Tracy Morgan would say, oh, no, he wouldn't. He would say this.
That's crazy.
Okay. So go with AndyMasonRealEstate.com. All right, Caleb, tell me about this young man that is going to be taking his unofficial to Tennessee, not for the Alabama game, not for the Georgia game, but for the South Carolina game. I think it's monstrous news out of the chute.
Yes, particularly versus Oklahoma. Now, I'm going to give a caveat here. His most recent list of top schools included 14 schools. Only 4 of them have home games this weekend. So, bit of a drop-off. So, one of them is Oklahoma has a home game. He spurned them for an unofficial visit to Tennessee. The other one is Colorado and USC. Now, again, Dion, we've talked about the force he is on the recruiting trail. And so you would think this would be a game to go take an unofficial visit to Colorado. USC coming to town, and he's still choosing Tennessee, South Carolina. I mean, that's kind of a big deal. And the other one, and this is just a local factor, he's from D.C., Maryland is playing Indiana at home right up the road this week, and Maryland's in his top 14 too. He's not going to Maryland, Indiana either.
He's on Maryland. Maryland's on the list because he's nearby.
Probably so. You're right. Mike Locksley has done a good job at Maryland of like more than other coaches getting local talent. Remember Dwayne Haskins, rest in peace, had committed to Mike Locksley at Maryland in 2015 before Locksley left. So kind of an interesting connection he has there.
Maryland was going to make a push with Under Armour money until they realized that Under Armour money was about 1/100th of Nike money. And Nike,
that was their mistake.
Yeah,
and they were trying to be the Oregon of the East.
Right, and it's not just Oregon. Tennessee is a Nike school, so you would rather be tied into Nike than Under Armour. Sorry, and I know that because I covered that time for ESPN when Under Armour tried to make a strong push and become the pseudo or next Nike. So that obviously didn't happen. But continue with your breakdown of this young man.
Yeah, so those are the 4: Oklahoma, Maryland, Colorado, and Tennessee that are in his top 14 that have home games this weekend. Spurning Colorado and Oklahoma for Tennessee to go to an unofficial visit to Tennessee is a big deal. And that's not a locational thing because, yes, DC's closer to Tennessee than Colorado. But let's be honest, Dave, on these unofficial visits, someone's probably still flying you out, aren't they?
Well, yeah, somebody's flying you out. But here's the other thing to remember. And yeah, somebody's flying you out, or they're finding the absolute cheapest tickets, or they're giving you points or something and that sort of thing. Yeah, I mean, you're getting flown out. I think he's pulling out the Jordan Seaton credit card and paying for his own trip. So, and there's nothing wrong with that. I think you should be able to take unlimited official visits, quite personally, because it's the biggest decision in your life. And I can tell you, if let's just say 10.79 the game in Los Angeles and 104.5 in Houston, and 7:90 a.m. in St. Louis wanted to hire me, there wouldn't be a limitation of 5 visits that I could take. I would be able to go in an open market society and take whichever visits I wanted to take. So they should be able to fly him out. And if they're finding ways around it, then good for Tennessee, good for any school, because it's good for the prospects. I'll always side with the prospects. But I think this is monster. And this is news that just broke right before we went on the air. So I think it's huge. Good eye by you. But Tennessee is going to have to build its offensive line through high school recruiting. I was talking to somebody within the program, and they talked about losing Darnell Wright, Jeremiah Crawford from last year. And then they talked about the potential.
No, they still have Jeremiah Crawford. You mean Jerome Carvin?
Jerome Carvin, excuse me. And it's the JCs that mix me up, and not Jesus Christ, as Pat McAfee.
My initials are JC too, so you know.
Yes. Okay. So, and they lose those guys, so they're going to lose Cooper Mays theoretically. Now he does have another year left. But when I was having this conversation in the offseason, you lose a Cooper Mays because he wanted to go to the NFL. We don't know what's going to happen with the injury, whether or not he might come back for another year. He does have another year of eligibility. So who else would you lose from this offensive line this year?
You could lose. Don't you lose Jeremiah Crawford? I mean, again, it's so confusing with COVID. So Jeremiah Crawford, Cooper Mays. As far as starting, I mean, that's maybe Javonte Spraggins, but he could be back. Mays and Spraggins, I think, could both be back next year if they want to. I don't know if Spraggins should. Look, I think Javonte Spraggins could start in the NFL tomorrow.
Here's the quote that somebody gave me from within the program. 2024 on the offensive line is when it gets dicey, because the guys that you've gone after, like Addison Nichols, and I don't want to use him as a target, but they have not developed to where they need to be. And you try to fill those holes with the Andre Carriggs and the John Campbells of the world. Mixed results on John Campbell, bad results on Andre Carrick, who did not at all grade well from what I'm told. And just so you know, this isn't from Cooper Mace, okay? So everybody thinks that everything we get is from Cooper and Jacob. I know how to work sources, and it's not from them. So just so you know. But they said this quote, 2024, that's when it gets dicey. You cannot depend on the transfer portal on the offensive line. Maybe at other positions, we'll see. I've got my question marks about that too, now that we've seen Dante Thornton. But on the offensive line in particular, Caleb, you've got to have guys progress that you bring up through the system. You better not have an offensive line that's dependent on 2 or 3 transfer portal guys, because it ain't going to work.
Yes, and here's the big point with the transfer portal. You and John Adams brought this up Tuesday, and I've come around to y'all. I want to add a caveat, but with the transfer portal, one, you still have to scout talent, because your best transfer portal guys are really good players at smaller schools that were just misevaluated on the recruiting trail and deserve a shot at a higher program. That's clearly where you get the best transfer portal players. The other situation for transfer portal players, now this is in general, there are exceptions. Hendon Hooker was an exception to everything I'm saying. But the other type of transfer portal player is they're at a big school, but they would like to play as freshmen or sophomores. They see a chance to play early at another school, not that they got beat out. Like, we're looking at Andre Carrick and Dante Thornton. They weren't waiting their turn at Oregon and Texas. They just got beat out for their jobs. I mean, that's just that simple.
And actually, Dante Thornton was waiting out his turn, and a player ahead of him got injured, is why he got to play. But still, he wasn't overly effective. He had like 250 yards and a touchdown. Maybe we're part of the problem in overhyping Dante Thornton, but I think your transfer rate, I've said this in high school recruiting, guys. I think that your success rate in high school football recruiting is always 50%. You go back and look at almost any class, there are aberrations like Lane Kiffin's 2009 class that was a bunch of felons. But you look at pretty much any class, 12 out of 25, 12 to 14 are contributors. The other dudes aren't. And it's almost by the board. I'm to the point, now I don't have enough of a track record. I want to continue to see this, but I'm to the point where I think the transfer portal might be 25-75. 25% are successful, 75% aren't. I'm about
Which
to
makes
that
it
point.
which makes it totally different from like the free agent market in the NFL, because I feel like high profile free agents are the 75-25, honestly. And this is where it's different. The free agent market and the transfer portal, it's not that their contract is up at a school and they're looking for a big deal. It's that they couldn't get the playing time they wanted at the school. That still applies even in the age of NIL. And that's what we're kind of seeing. And by the way, you talked about it with John Calipari saying, what did he said, tripping over nickels, chasing dollars,
Chasing millions. Like Chasing millions.
Chasing millions. Yes. Think about this for a minute. If your North Star is just the NIL checks in college and not your NFL potential, you may not be as dedicated to work hard for your NFL draft slot.
Thank you. You remember the saying used to be probably when you were young, but definitely when I was young, if I had $1 million at 18 and I invested it properly, I would never have to work again. Sorry, inflation, kids, $1 million ain't what it used to be. I mean, it's a good chunk of cash, and you and I aren't going to turn it down, but we're probably still going to come to work on Monday, right?
Yeah. I mean, exactly. I would put that $1 million away. I'd pay off my debts and put it away. I've thought about this in my head a lot. I'm like, okay, student loan debts here, debts there, cover these things, and then put the rest away and don't touch it.
Yeah, it's like me when, when I think about, man, what am I going to do when I win the lottery? Guess how many lottery tickets I bought in my lifetime?
How many?
0. I'm not going to win the lottery because I don't buy them, but I do appreciate those that do because it pays for our children's education. Today's tough question brought to you by Zen Sports. At least in Tennessee, that's where the money's supposed to go. Here we go.
Today's tough question. Take a side. Take a stand. The Dave Hooker Show, a presentation of offthehooksports.com.
All right, Caleb brought this up in the 3:45 a.m. production meeting, and I got to be honest with you, I rethought it afterwards, Caleb. So I'm going to throw a left curve at you, or left hook, a curve ball at you, whatever you want to call it. Is Tennessee, South Carolina, the Vols' most important game of the year for recruiting purposes? That is today's tough question. I'm going to change it. Is it even more important than that? And I'm going to tell you why it is. It's brought to you by Zen Sports, the new sports book in Tennessee, revolutionizing the way you earn sports betting rewards. That means no more deposit bonuses that turn into deposit nightmares. On Zen Sports, what you see is what you get. And with their cash rewards program, you get a lot of cash. For a welcome bonus, earn an unlimited 5% cash back on your betting volume for your first 15 days when you sign up with the promo code HOOKED. That's HOOKED. That's right. Unlimited 5% cash back. Keep betting, keep earning with up to 3% cash back on your betting volume every month after that, and refer friends to earn a percentage of their betting volume as cash rewards too. Zen Sports bringing the cash back to Tennessee. So if you bet big on sports, you want to be betting on Zen Sports. Zen Sports betting just got better. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-889-9789. Must be 21 and over and in Tennessee to bet. It's bigger than just the most important game of the year for recruiting purposes. It's the most important game of the year, period, in the discussion. And I'm going to tell you why. If Tennessee drops this one, they've already lost to Florida. They will be underdogs against Alabama and Georgia. You are looking at a potential 4-loss SEC team if things don't get back on track on Saturday. I think it is monstrous. Why don't you address the recruiting aspect of it first and why you think it's so important? We went over that in the 3:45 a.m. production meeting. It is monstrous from a recruiting standpoint because Tennessee, as the Celebrate 98 series will attest, was at their best when they recruited the Carolinas. So take me down that path with those that don't know.
Well, it's half and that and half what you just said. I mean, the first half, just to add on what you just said, if they lose to South Carolina, you're going to lose to Alabama and Georgia, and you're pushing 7-5. You're fighting to not be 7-5 or 6-6, which would just wreck you on the recruiting trail in general and wreck all the momentum you've had that Josh Heupel built. So it's already the most important game of the year. I agree for that reason. Now, on recruiting specifically with South Carolina, look, guys, Tennessee is in a rare opportunity to really, really cash in. Clemson is struggling as a football program. I mean, we're seeing a program that's dramatically on the decline. I think Dabo Swinney did himself no favors railing against NIL and refusing to go into the transfer portal. And by the way, he can't get his credibility back with recruits. Dave, you know this. Like, the minute you lose your credibility, you really don't get it back. that red flag is there forever. So Clemson is sliding, and they are sliding fast. Believe me. South Carolina is still a wild card. Their win over Tennessee last year literally saved the program and kept it afloat. I mean, Shane Beamer might have been fired by the end of last year. I'm not sure he would have been, but they got about 4 blue chip recruits specifically because of how they finished the season last year. Period. End of story. They wouldn't have gotten them, and 2 of them would have ended up in Tennessee at a bare minimum. So South Carolina, Tennessee needs to not just beat them. They need to send the program into a death spiral, because if they need to beat the brakes off them. I mean, blow them out. Let everybody know last year was a fluke, because Tennessee and Josh Heupel need to make it clear that they are the better program. Josh Heupel and Shane Beamer took over the same year in 2021. Tennessee cannot let South Carolina get competitive, because with Clemson sliding, if they beat South Carolina handily, South Carolina is Tennessee's place for the taking. They can go in there and they can pick their litter of recruits. And more importantly than that, I think eventually the SEC is going to do the pod system, the 3 SEC teams that you play permanently and 6 rotating teams. All signs point to South Carolina being one of the teams Tennessee plays annually. And if that happens, Tennessee needs to make sure that that it's very clear South Carolina is not on their level. One of the things that destroyed Tennessee in the 2000s, Mark Richt going to Georgia was the biggest. I think you would agree with me on that, Dave, right? That probably did the most damage to Tennessee recruiting. They couldn't pick pocket Georgia anymore the way they could.
True, and he was a good enough coach that they won their fair share of games too.
Exactly, which is why they were able to kind of close off the pipeline Tennessee built. What also hurt Tennessee? Lou Holtz going to South Carolina, and then Steve Spurrier going to South Carolina, and Dabo Swinney building up Clemson. By the 2010s, Steve Spurrier and Dabo Swinney are both rolling, icing out South Carolina. Georgia is Georgia. Where was Tennessee going to go for recruiting? That's why the 2010s, that is the biggest reason the 2010s was a decade of dysfunction. They couldn't recruit South Carolina and Georgia.
Hey, I want to bring out a comment from SC Scout Guy, because I think he's one of our better commenters. He said, Caleb, stop talking nonsense. There is zero chance Shane was even close to being fired. I'm gonna back my guy here, Caleb Calhoun. I think that it was maybe a little bit closer than you think. Not fired, but at least going into the offseason on the hot seat before the Tennessee and Clemson game. Maybe that's a common ground we have, SC Scout Guy.
Yeah, I would. You're right. I wouldn't say he was going to be fired last year, but I do think there would have been a put up or shut up movement, because South Carolina would have finished 6-7 had they not won those 2 games. And 6-7 Shane Beamer's second year would have been a really bad look, because guys, they were looking really bad before that Tennessee game. I will never forget how low morale was surrounding South Carolina before the Tennessee game. Quite honestly, it was one of the best turnarounds for a program I'd seen, and I give them credit for that. But yeah, it did a number on Tennessee. They lost Mazio Bennett specifically because of that game. I mean, there's no question about it.
We're past the first quarter, so quarterly grades are out, and we've done that. But Josh Ward points out some players that, man, they got to step up their game. And I imagine Dante Thornton's going to be on this list. He joins us in exactly 90 seconds with Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker, Off the Hook Sports.
For Candace, I was really heavy into the drug culture. I was selling drugs. I was just constantly in pain. I was missing like a good support system in my life. Candace has given me everything that I need in order to successfully have a wonderful recovery, in order to have a life that I didn't even know was possible before. And it's not just about me anymore, and I love that. I absolutely love it.
You can take your life back. Call Cadis today.
With all that sun, sand, and salt water, the beach is a very relaxing place. Unless you wear contacts. Ow! Open your eyes to the best the beach has to offer with LASIK vision correction from Campbell Cunningham Laser Center.
Sports Treasures in North Knoxville is one of the South's largest sports cards and memorabilia dealers, featuring over 10 million sports cards from vintage to modern. Sports Treasures carries a full line of hobby boxes, singles, autographed memorabilia, Tennessee Vol collectibles, fan cave decorations, and so much more. See a museum full of collectibles at Sports Treasures, 4819 North Broadway in Fountain City, and Sports Treasures on Facebook. Sports Treasures, where the real sports fan goes to shop.
A college football tradition like no other.
Yes, sirree, boys and girls.
Or a guy that just won't leave.
Wow, that is sad.
The Dave Hooker Show. YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the free Off the Hook Sports app. A presentation of Off the Hook Sports. Back to Dave Hooker.
So one more comment from SC Scout guy. Dave, I totally disagree on that Beamer would have been in the hot seat. We may have to agree to disagree on this. You don't realize how badly Muschamp left this program. He was getting 5 years regardless. I don't think anybody gets 5 years. The fan base absolutely loves Shane Beamer. Should have loved his wife because he really outkicked his coverage. But SC Scout guy, I totally appreciate where you're coming from. You bring a lot to the message board. Man, it seemed to be going really south for the Tennessee game. Josh Ward, how are you, sir?
I'm good. How are you guys?
Where are you? You got like some sort of neat background or something? Or are you you look like you're at the, I don't know, maybe the top of Thompson Bowling Arena? I'm trying to figure this out. What do you got going on?
At Food City Center, to be clear. Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. By the way, maybe somebody with the last name Bowling reached out to Dave and wasn't too pleased about Food City Center. Maybe that'll be on offthehooksports.com before long.
Oh, interesting. Hanging out in the office, the studio where we do our show.
All right. Great stuff. All right. You can check Josh out from noon to 3. He is fantastic. We love him. And his articles are brilliant on offthehooksports.com. What do you think about that? Brilliant. It's pretty good.
I would endorse that.
I would apply and agree. So, which Vols need to step it up? Let's go through these. You had Dante Thornton. I don't know if you had did you have these listed in order of, hey, really get your bleep together, or was it alphabetical or reverse order? How did you list them?
Yeah, it's somewhat weighted. I thought Dante Thornton was pretty obvious. So that's why I kind of led the article with him, because he came in with so much hype and he is so physically gifted. A guy with his size that can run the way that he can. And the way that Tennessee talked about Dante Thornton, the opening press conference of fall camp for Joey Halsley, he's talking about the great athleticism and freaky talent of Dante Thornton. And earlier in the summer, when Phil Steele came on our radio show and we asked him, is there a player to watch to really emerge for Tennessee this year? And he didn't hesitate. He said, oh yeah, Dante Thornton. And that came from talking to Tennessee. Actually, he talked to Joey Halsley as well. And again, you can see Halsley, you can see Thornton run and do everything that would excite a coach, but he just hasn't made the plays on the field. He's shown glimpses. The play that he made after not making a play against Florida, they went right back to him, and Joe Milton delivered a perfect ball for, I think, a 43-yard gain against the Gators, but a drop against Austin Peay that got him benched and just not stepping up and making big plays. This offense needs big plays, and Thornton has the physical talent to deliver that.
Josh's appearance brought to you in part by our friends at the Hemp House, hemphousechat.com, hemphouse, the premier hemp dispensary online with a wide variety, great selection, and strict standards to ensure you only receive the best in CBD or Delta products. And they put this together for us, the Big Orange Crunch, which I believe Josh consumes on a daily basis, is what I'm told. Hemp House Chat with 2 T's.com. Maybe not, but they're good for relaxing. Go ahead and get on there and use the promo code Hooked. Here's what somebody told me, and this was a weird comment, because I'm looking at Dante Thornton's age. So he was born in November 30th, 2022. So how old is he right now? Somebody do the math.
2022. Don't you mean 2002?
2002. Yes, he was born last year. He's almost a year old.
Yeah, in that case, he's overachieved, in my opinion. But November 2002, so he's about to turn 21.
Okay, somebody told me, I didn't realize he was so young. And I wonder if this guy's still developing physically. And this is more of a long-term type of player as a transfer, as opposed to a guy that's going to fill an immediate need, a la Jalen Hyatt. So that at least got me thinking that better days might be ahead, Josh. I didn't realize he was that young. Did you?
I mean, is that young? I definitely give him a chance to grow and develop as a player, but I mean, he's been in the Pac-12 playing for a high-level program in Oregon for a couple of years, and has been at Tennessee the last few months. I mean, about to turn 21. There are a lot of players that are younger than him. Now, it's a weird time in college where, yeah, there are some 24 and 25-year-olds out there. I get that, but I don't view that as that young in college sports.
Well, that was my other thing.
I mean, he's right. I think he's average age probably for his class, right?
Yeah, maybe
draft eligible.
That was the other thing that made me wonder. Maybe he's a little bit immature.
Maybe I just I wonder if to this point, because really the Austin Peay game, that's not a big stage. I do wonder, has the stage, the expectation of the program, that's a big stage no matter the game. Is that a little bit too much? I wondered when he arrived at Tennessee, why didn't he do more at Oregon? He averaged more than 21 yards per catch there last year, and he had some big plays, but not a high volume. And I wondered why. My expectation was, hey, this offense that Tennessee runs, he's just going to be running wide open. He'll catch the ball. But it hasn't been there for him. And the offense itself is the next guy on the list, is the guy that's leading it, of players that need to step up and be better. That the performance to this point has been disappointing is Joe Milton. So there are a number of players where they all need to come together. But if Thornton's better, Joe Milton is better. Joe Milton, although also has to be better, and that's in a number of areas. Decision making. Sometimes I'm not sure what he's seen. He's also made some plays where it's like, well, that's why everybody can't wait to watch him play football. But for Thornton, I can't explain why he's made the mistakes that he has, but he has to eliminate those, or he's probably going to lose his spot on the field.
Josh, I'm going to skip over Milton and go to the next guy, because we've discussed Milton at length in a lot of different ways. Before I get there, I want to point out with Thornton, you brought up that third down pass. You're right. That was a perfect dime by Joe Milton. And I don't think Thornton was recruited to only catch dimes. I think he was recruited to actually be able to make plays on maybe overthrows or things like that. And the thing that annoys me before I move on is I don't see the effort there. I see the opposite with the next guy on your list, and I want to know what you think, which is John Campbell Jr., which is I see the effort with John Campbell Jr. I just feel like he's making a lot of mental mistakes, maybe just struggling to pick up the offense. Is that what you're seeing with him at left tackle, or do you think it's deeper than that?
I haven't sensed any kind of effort issue, no, with John Campbell Jr. He had a tough evening in Gainesville, and that's part of the challenge here in some ways, is that Tennessee's played one real game out of four. So a lot of it's going to be weighted in how that game went, in my opinion. So here's the next test against an SEC team. But Campbell had this block that got everybody excited, went viral. Former linemen are sharing it on Twitter, and should have, where he drove a Virginia linebacker who didn't see Campbell coming and got everybody fired up. But Virginia's terrible. So what you do against Florida and what you do in the SEC is going to matter in the Austin Peay game. Again, it comes back to that, because that game shouldn't have mattered until it did, because they were playing so poorly. And the offensive line performance over the last few weeks, most notably Florida, but Austin Peay as well, was just not good enough. So, maybe it's understanding the offense. Part of it could just be physically losing battles, especially in that Florida game. But Campbell in August was getting some talk. Remember, this is all behind the scenes. Nobody's seeing practice. So word starts to come out, man, watch for Dante Thornton. Man, watch for John Campbell. We've solidified that left tackle spot with him coming in. NFL teams need to watch out. And I assure you, NFL teams have not been impressed by what they've seen. But I do like Campbell's attitude. I do believe that he cares about playing high-level football at Tennessee to try to get to the next level in the NFL. So I don't think effort's an issue. Performance just needs to be better.
Yeah, and I want to say this. Offensive linemen oftentimes look like they are not giving effort when they're unsure. So I'm very hesitant to question offensive linemen and effort, because if you're unsure, it looks like you don't play with effort, which I think are two totally different things. Elijah
Is
Herring.
it fair though? Is it fair for me to question Dante Thornton's effort the way I did though before we move on? Because I haven't seen him fight for balls.
Yes, different position. Totally fair. Elijah, totally fair. I got no problem with that. Elijah Herring at linebacker. He just continues to have. He played well last week, but the Keenan Pili thing was an issue. They didn't want to lose him. I would put him right up at the top of the second tier of players you didn't want to lose, behind maybe Milton and Cooper Mays. And they did lose Cooper Mays, but Elijah Herring, I think that he's going to end up being a very good player. They need him to be a very good player like September 28th, September 29th, September 30th.
Yeah. If we want to talk about effort, never an issue with Elijah Herring. He sometimes like, hey, you don't need to give as much effort, man. You can save it for the next play. For him, it's just he's continuing to learn the position. And I do think that we found out that the excitement about the depth at linebacker was overblown in August. And maybe part of that was, well, by midseason, these guys will be ready. But we found out that Tennessee needed that depth to show up by week 2. And there have been some challenging moments for Elijah, but again, his effort is there. Thought he played better against UTSA. Let's see against South Carolina. I'm sure that the Gamecocks will try to find ways to get him in mismatches in the passing game and see if they can take advantage, see if they can get him out of position in a number of different ways, like Florida was able to do. And that goes for Herring and other defenders too. But Aaron Beasley, I think, is a really good player for Tennessee, also a max effort guy, and somebody that Herring can learn from. I'm sure that he's talked to Pili and tried to learn from him as well as linebackers coach Brian Jean-Marie. And maybe Herring goes out and plays really well on Saturday. I wouldn't even be surprised to see that happen. But his performance the last few weeks is a reminder that, okay, depth is still a work in progress at linebacker. And Dave, you're right. They're hoping that progress shows up this week.
Caleb, would you like to ask about Kamal Hadden as Josh broadcast from the Starship Enterprise?
I was going to bring up.
I love the beat drop.
Josh, do you think look, there's the missed tackle Kamal Hadden had, but he only allowed one catch on 4 targets against Florida. Do you think part of the annoyance that people have with Kamal Hadden is how much he talks when he's on the field and how much he jaws? Is he almost like the college football version of Dylan Brooks?
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, probably because like Dylan Brooks, Hadden can make plays. Dylan Brooks is a solid NBA player. Nobody wants to hear NBA talk, I'm sure, but people are talking about him like, okay, well, he's going to have to go play overseas. Like, no, he's going to get an $80 million contract to play. Kamal Hadden, a lot of I'm still getting daily messages saying Hadden's not going to play this week, right? It's like, well, yeah, I'm pretty sure he's going to start just like he did this past week. The coaches still believe he's one of the top corners on this team. That could be an indictment on the group. I get that. But Hadden has playmaking ability. But the South Carolina game last year, when he's playing poorly, the team is getting demolished, and he's talking a lot of trash. Nobody's going to like that. And then the effort or lack thereof against Florida, that's going to upset a lot of people and should. But, the reaction of, okay, well, then just play one of the freshmen. Sometimes that can lead to even more problems, not fix them. So he needs to play more consistent. And if he's not playing well, definitely doesn't need to be talking up to the other side of the field. But Hadden's a very important player. That's why he's on the list. He needs to be better, more consistent. But Tennessee needs him to be better and more consistent because he's going to be out there on the field.
You include Dylan Sampson, but you start with a slap of big asterisks on this one.
Big asterisk.
Yeah, it's not Dylan Sampson's fault. He's not playing well. I thought Tennessee against Florida he got lost in the shuffle, which is inexcusable.
Yeah, and that's why I put him at the bottom of the list too, because Dylan would be more of an example of the excitement of what the offense would be during the offseason and during the conversation in August. Dylan's lack of opportunity at times, really we're talking about the Florida game, but also Austin Peay. I think he had 4 touches in that game, is part of the conversation. And that's why what he did against Virginia with more of a chance, and then this past week, is a reminder that he has to be involved in the offense. So none of it is Dylan's fault as far as I'm aware. I'm not aware of anything off the field that kept him from playing against Florida. Coaches just didn't include him, and we've covered that. That was a mistake. So as long as that mistake is righted, there is a chance for more explosion in the offense because Dylan has big playmaking ability. So the disappointment is not in Dylan. The disappointment is in him being on the sideline.
Let me ask you from what you hear, because you're on remotes, you're out there and you take phone calls more than we do, I would imagine. And what do you hear from the community about Joe Milton, just in general?
I feel like there's a back and forth. There's the side that is like, well, he's just not going to get it done, and people have decided that. There's also the side that wants to defend, and in some ways will go over the top in defending him and ignoring some of the responsibility on Joe's side as well for where the offense is at this point. So I find him to be a polarizing subject at this point in the season among Tennessee fans. That's whether I'm talking to friends of mine who are big Tennessee fans, or whether we're taking calls, or we have a text box where messages come in where fans can hit us up anytime. And I find him to be polarizing in how fans view how he's played through 4 games.
The most polarizing since Casey Clausen, maybe?
I thought Dobbs was pretty polarizing. A lot of people have forgotten how much they didn't want him to play at times. So Dobbs, I thought was, I'd say Joe's more polarizing. Dobbs, to this point, though, had also accomplished more. He was a better player, to be clear, than Joe. So I don't know. I just because of Joe's hype and Joe's talent, but the lack of results to this point, and a 5-star freshman behind him on the depth chart, plus the social media era, it's always difficult to compare somebody now versus pre-social media.
Sure.
I mean, Joe is right there at the top.
Okay, so Josh, what about? I mean, I'm going to go more recent. I thought Jared Garantano was pretty darn polarizing. Or was that it polarizing? I think maybe everybody just wanted him benched. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe for a short window of time. The problem is it became too over the top in the hate of Jared Garantano, because part of it with the depth chart, it was the opposite of this situation. We were I know there was Harrison Bailey as last year, but it started before that, 2019, when there's Brian Maurer and JT Shrout, and fans were too many fans were saying, no, just play the other guys. And I tried to explain, I understand your problems with Jarrett, but the backup options are worse. They are worse options. And it had nothing to do with Jarrett at that point. It's just, no, play somebody else. Or I guess it was all about Jarrett. So, yeah, for a short period of time, Jarrett was polarizing, and then so many people were just out.
Josh's appearance brought to you in part by Herald Group Security Solutions. Leadership experience, specialization, addressing problems through unique mission-specific mitigation techniques. These guys are trained for like 60 days, and they want to protect your children and protect private schools. We're working towards getting them in public schools too, but they've already had a phone call and said, hey, my kid goes to a private school. I want you involved. That's Herald Group Security Solutions. They make your children safer. We've heard of the tragedies. Let's eliminate them. HeraldGRP.com. They provide security for private schools, soon to be public schools. Herald Group Security Solutions. So, Josh, do your listeners, ours don't, but do your listeners factor in that Cooper Mays, if he's in the lineup this year, brings a calming influence, brings an organizational influence from handling the line calls, or is it just, man, that Joe Milton's really terrible? I mean, I guess I'll ask the group. Okay. So Josh, if you have, what would you grade Jared? What would you grade Jared? Joe Milton to this point? Just overall A, B, C, D, F grade.
Say C.
Caleb?
He's made some good plays, but he's not made nearly enough.
Caleb?
Yeah, I'd say C in the sense that I'd say C because of his pocket presence. Again, I don't think he's taking advantage of his strength and his legs and his ability to run the way he should.
Okay, I'll say C too. Does anybody disagree that he's a B at least if Cooper Mays is in there all month? Josh, I'll start with you.
Joe would definitely have a chance to be that. So no injury, no problem. Cooper's just out there playing.
Nothing happened. Nothing.
Yeah, I don't know how high my confidence is that that's the case, but if you tried to sell me on it, I'm sure I'd buy.
Okay, Caleb, am I crazy?
I I think he'd stay at C. I don't think his stat line would be much different. I think it's just the running game in general would have been better against Florida if Cooper Mays were in there. I think Tennessee would have ran the ball a lot better.
Yeah, part of the issue here, again, I know I've mentioned already, is that the competition's been so awful. So for us to have this conversation after these kinds of games, I mean, this is as weak of a non-conference schedule as I can remember Tennessee playing. Virginia is not a Power 5 level opponent. I know what conference they play in, but they're not Power 5 quality. FCS team and then a UTSA team that's reeling, didn't have their quarterback. So, and then Florida, I think Florida's a pretty good team, but that's at best a tough road environment. But that was also a terrible overall performance. So yeah, that's part of the concern. That's why getting it fixed has to happen very quickly, because after this week is when the competition really heats up. This is a great chance. It's a night game at home. I'm saying something that everybody knows, you guys know very well. This is the spot against a team that's been terrible defensively. So if it doesn't happen this week, if it's not better than a C performance at home against South Carolina, then I have no confidence that we're seeing a B or better level of play the rest of the way.
Yeah, I agree with what Darla said. Come on, look at Tennessee's schedule so far. It's a joke, and it is. I feel like we're talking about an NFL team, Josh, that's 0-1 after 3 good preseason outings.
Yeah, for sure.
And not even good preseason outings. There was one bad one, Austin Peay.
yeah, right. Because remember the talk leading up to that game that we were all having is, okay, here's what Tennessee will do. Can they score 50? Can they score 60? When does Nico get in? How much time will he get? Will he get a whole second half? And he didn't get to play because the first team offense was so bad. As I mentioned in the article, as we continue to talk about, that wasn't all Joe, but Joe was part of it for sure. And if he had played better, they score more points and have more success. So others need to step up. And it was that game, right, where Jabari Small had a bad third down drop. Keaton had a fumble. The drop I mentioned by Dante Thornton. So other players have to step up and they have to be better. That includes the offensive line for sure. That includes the receivers helping Joe out at times. But I mentioned in the article as well, I think it's crazy that he has the strongest arm in the country playing in this offense, which can be the most explosive in the nation. And he's last in the SEC in yards per attempt. And my thought was, okay, well, maybe it's because of so many quick passes to the outside in the screen game. He's 11th in the SEC in completion percentage. That just can't be all on everybody else.
Josh, I know it's the next game. We say it's the most important game. And if you and I, and when we have done a show with regularity, I'm usually the one that's outlandish and you bring me back to the earth. But so you may have to do so right now. So I think this is the most important game right now on Tennessee's football schedule, because if they lose this game, they're going to be underdogs against Alabama and Georgia. We discussed this earlier. It's also huge in recruiting, because if you can win in the Carolinas, you can win a national championship. Tennessee proved that in 98. And I believe this is a monster game for Tennessee. And is that hyperbole or am I right?
I think it is. I think it's more because of the timing and the schedule, but also the opponent. Because if Tennessee loses this game, and they've played 2 real opponents, and they're 0-2, and the one where they're a big favorite at home in a night game where everybody's amped up and the environment is all on Tennessee side and they can't win it, you know how long the next 2 weeks are going to be leading up to the Texas A&M game? And will there be an opportunity to right the wrong? Sure. That's not a great one, not a great opportunity. So if it were Georgia week, I wouldn't say it's as important because Tennessee would be the underdog going into this game. So a loss would be expected. And then we'd look at future games, say, oh, well, they got South Carolina coming up. And I saw the comment, Carolina's a good team. They've had a brutal schedule. Carolina has been tested a lot more than Tennessee, and they're an okay team. I think they're a real opponent that Tennessee better be ready for. Better than Austin Peay, better than UTSA, no doubt about that, and obviously Virginia. But this is one Tennessee just has to have. And people will happily forget very quickly. Nobody's going to care about 11-2 last year if Tennessee's 0-2 in the SEC. So the next 2 weeks will be rough, and the season could get rougher because the competition is tougher after this Saturday. So got to win this one.
Great column, offthehooksports.com. Look for Josh's column on the guys that need to step up. Can't thank you enough. Josh, have a blessed day, sir.
Hey, you got it. Thanks a lot, guys.
He is
good one,
Josh Ward of WNML. His appearance brought to you in part by City Heating and Air Conditioning, 50 years in East Tennessee. Integrity matters. Don't trust a fly-by-night HVAC company to tell you that you need a new unit when you could save thousands. Support our advertisers. We greatly appreciate it. And they're right down below, no matter where you're watching or viewing. Yeah, Caleb, this isn't your run-of-the-mill game. You know, Tennessee beating Florida, then you could say they could perhaps slip up in a game versus a South Carolina or an A&M or somebody else. But in games that they're double-digit favored as, you cannot, from a recruiting standpoint, from an overall program integrity standpoint, you can't slip up in this game. You just can't.
I'm going to say this, and I haven't said this yet, but I thought about it more as we talked the South Carolina game. Dave, you remember before spring practice when you changed your tune after spring practice because of Joe Milton, but you were making predictions back in the winter that Nico would take the job in October. Well, September the 30th is Saturday. That's Tennessee's last game in September. If they lose to if they lose to South Carolina and Joe Milton looks like he's looked through the first 4 weeks, like so inconsistent, you might be closer to your prediction than you even thought, because I don't think the coaches can withstand the onslaught of demands for Nico at that point. Do you?
You know, it's so funny you brought that up because I was thinking that this morning. I mean, what happens if you lose to South Carolina and you're 0 for 2 in the month against
and
the
you got
SEC?
2 weeks off again before your next game?
Yeah,
imagine the cost.
I think then the great unknown. Now, I have been told that Nico is ready to play. That if he had to step in, let's say there's an injury in the first quarter, that Tennessee would be just fine. But your point, which you've continually brought up, that he needs to gain weight, is probably true as well. I didn't have an opportunity that the conversation got cut short with somebody in Tennessee's program. But I will tell you this. He is ready from an X's and O's and handling the huddle to step in and play. Now, does he get hurt because he's too light? I don't know the answer to that question. And that has to be a concern. Now, you've said, which I disagree with respectfully, that you can get beat up and it can affect your mindset for the rest of your college career, which probably happened to Joey Matthews in 1998 when he went live in spring practice against Tennessee's 1998 national championship defense. But I think for the most part, the true warriors will bounce back from things like that. And I think Nico is a true warrior.
I agree. And that's where you want to test intangibles. I actually wanted to ask you about 98, funny enough, because you were covering the team. I saw, not going to name it, but I saw a really dumb Twitter thread that was defending Joe Milton by saying, well, look at how T. Martin started through the first 5 games in 98, which he did play poorly those first 5 games. But Tennessee started 5-0, and they played that was the toughest 5-game stretch to open the season in the history of Tennessee football, whereas this is the easiest 4-game stretch to open the season in the history of Tennessee football. But Dave, you were there. I know there wasn't Twitter, but were there a lot of call-ins on radio shows calling to bench T. Martin early in the season because of the way he was playing?
No, because they won and they beat Florida. Here's the other thing that we know now that people didn't know back then is the playbook was so limited. And don't forget, he had the key run against Syracuse. So I don't know what his stat line was, but just off the top of my head, he would have to get a B+ or A, even though the offensive playbook was so limited because they didn't trust him yet, which frustrated him. They beat Florida with a very conservative game plan, made plays on defense. And no, I don't remember any of those calls whatsoever. Who would Tennessee have gone to? Joey Matthews?
That's the thing. There was no backup quarterback. I just think it was the
and you're 4-0. And here's the other thing too. So we're kind of it's two different things. It's apples and oranges, because you have to ask Joe Milton to do more in this offense than you had to ask T. Martin to do in that offense. So there's more onus on Joe Milton than there was on T. Martin, even though T. Martin wanted more onus. If that makes sense.
The only time I think there might have been a question, though, was it was the Auburn game where T. Martin goes to Auburn. If you remember, T. Martin played horrible in that Auburn game. Tennessee won because of the Sean Ellis pick 6, and then the defense, remember, stopping Auburn 4 times on like the 1 foot line, and they win 17-9. But T. Martin doesn't do anything in that game. And then Jamal Lewis goes down for the year right before Georgia. So I feel like between Auburn and Georgia, just that 1 week, I wonder how many questions there were about T. Martin at that point, because you're thinking, oh, you're going to need him more now with Jamal gone.
Rocky Top Tom says, Joe C., if Joe has the worst game ever on Saturday, it's incredibly too late to insert Nico at this point. The cupcake games would be perfect to put him in, transition him, and get him ready. I'm gonna defend my guy Caleb with a piece of information that I was told they're splitting the snaps, the first team snaps 50-50. Okay. So usually it's like 70-30. So don't.
And I got a history lesson for Rocky Top Tom for that question. Who did Peyton Manning get his first start against?
Auburn?
Anybody know? No. 1994 against a 3-0 top 25 Mike Price-led Washington State team that had the number 1 defense in the nation. That was Peyton Manning's first start. You're telling me you got to give freshman quarterbacks cupcakes?
Yeah, there you go. Here's one from Darla. Darla, who is the third string quarterback, asking what happens if we lose both quarterbacks? You don't want to know. I mean, I love Gaston Moore. I love Navy Schuler. I think they're great individuals. But this is a team that went into this season with 2 quarterbacks. And that's going to be the new mantra nowadays, because quarterbacks are going to transfer if they can't play. The old days of having 3 or 4 quarterbacks that can go out there and play, they're over. I mean, coaches used to tell me all the time, you want a quarterback in every class. Well, that sounds great. But it was stupid back then. It wasn't going to happen because guys knew that you already had a good quarterback room. T. Martin, the exception of the rule, came to play behind Peyton Manning. And you're not going to have that anymore. Guys are going to cruise on out. I mean, if Joe Milton were lighting it up right now, okay, if he had 180 quarterback rating like Cam Newton does instead of 140, which we tried to compare Cam Newton and Joe Milton yesterday, there's a big difference in the way they throw the football. But if he had 180 quarterback rating and led the SEC, you know what the conversation would be right now, Caleb?
Heisman?
That, and do you think Nico might want to transfer? I mean, you think he's upset or something? I mean, I know Joe's gone after this year, but every single quarterback that is a freshman or sophomore or junior that is behind a quarterback that is a sophomore or a junior is thinking in the back of their heads, I can always transfer if this goes south. Rocky Top Thomas, some love. Look at him. Love you, John C. You the man. By the way.
Yeah, I still have to push back on Rocky Top Tom because it was Washington State. Not Washington they played.
Fight.
I'm ready to fight. Washington State, going into that Tennessee game, had beaten UCLA, who, by the way, beat Tennessee to open the season that year. And they beat Illinois, a top 25 team at that point. So they were 3-0 with 2 top 25 wins, including a win over one team that beat Tennessee. So...
as far as my third string quarterback comment, Darla says, oh my. Here's what happens if they get to the third string quarterback. You give Josh Heupel a total pass and pretend 2023 never happened. And next year will be his third year that you can truly judge him.
If and they lose, have an offensive line, so then it's great.
If they lose both quarterbacks, that ain't happening. Can Cam can Cam throw an orange over 130 yards? I don't think so, but maybe he can because we know that Joe Milton can. So coming up next, we got this Dan Lanning, Deion Sanders, Colorado, Lou Holtz, Ryan Day firing at each other. Does the sport need more of this? Yes, I love it. I would love for Josh Heupel to take a shot at somebody. And also, we've got some gambling picks as my guy, Caleb Calhoun, is going to make you money. You give us 2 minutes, we give you the world right after this. Stay tuned. Off the Hook Sports.
Our family has been creating one-of-a-kind pieces of jewelry in West Knoxville since 1986. Each piece is a combination of unique processes that bring your idea to life. Every day in our shop, a truly special item with a story all its own is being manufactured in our facility. bringing the history and family sentiment into a whole new generation of life. We're grateful that you chose us to be Knoxville's best jeweler, a title that we value and respect. Because to me, being a jeweler and owning a jewelry store are not the same thing. I'm Rick Terry. I'm a jeweler, and we want to be your jeweler. Kingston Pike and Campbell Station Road in the heart of Farragut, and downtown on Gay Street right next to the Tennessee Theater.
Hi, Mike Davis here with City Heating and Air, reminding you to always dare to compare. Our team provides quality local heating and air service, installation, and maintenance across East Tennessee. We use only the best equipment like American Standard heating and air conditioning for your residential, new construction, or commercial needs. Honesty, dependability, and customer satisfaction have been the cornerstones of our business since 1961. City Heat and Air.
Dare to compare.
These mountains hold and defend a spirit far better than moonshine. A drink that holds flavor, that becomes necessity. A hard cider made and relished by folk who are as hearty as they are legend. A refreshment that can only be found in one place. With a taste that makes you say, give me 3 bottles of the good stuff. Tennessee Cider Company, where necessity can be found.
Who's this guy?
Hello, wizard.
The Dave Hooker Show.
Who?
A presentation of Off the Hook Sports.
What?
YouTube, Apple, Spotify, and the free Off the Hook Sports app. Back to Dave Hooker.
Folks, Rick Terry Jewelry Design, they do such great work. They can create a masterpiece for you. But I also want to tell you this. They do jewelry design, and they do it fantastically well. But if you're looking for something for your loved one, and I know we're primarily probably male-centered here, but we love you, Darla, for being online. You need to go to rickterryjewelrydesign.com because they have the Fire Opals, and they're very affordable game day jewelry, a Tennessee tradition. The game day jewelry, the Fire Opals, rickterryjewelry.com. They want to be your jeweler, and affordable game day jewelry is pretty darn awesome. So please check them out, support our sponsors, and let them know that you heard about it from Off the Hook, and we greatly appreciate that. It is time for 4 Downs, and we're going to talk a little bit of trash talking, which I love. If I could change anything about Josh Heupel, it would be a little bit more trash talking. Here we go. 4 Downs now is brought to you by our friends at Sports Treasures.
4 Downs. 4 questions. 4 answers. The Dave Hooker Show.
4
Downs. A presentation of offthehooksports.com.
So give me some background if you can, Caleb. We got Dan Lanning and Deion Sanders going at each other. We got Lou Holtz and Ryan Day going at each other publicly. That's what's different. Don't think for a second that Josh Heupel doesn't hate Eli Drinkwitz, and he does at Missouri. And don't think for a second he didn't run the score up last year because he hates Eli, I need a new haircut, Drinkwitz. So my questions with 4 Downs is going to be all about trash talking. And Cooper Mays first will tell you that you need to do this.
Cooper Mays here. Hit like and subscribe.
And turn your notifications on. We're almost to a big number on YouTube, so please subscribe. If you haven't, tell a friend today. We'd greatly appreciate it. What's happening with Dan Lanning and Deion Sanders? Give me a backdrop before we start rocking with the 4 Downs. Brought to you by our friends at Sports Treasures, carrying over 5 million sports treasures and so much more. Follow them on Facebook for the best sports memorabilia, ball stuff everywhere. They had a Hendon Hooker signed helmet. It's awesome. Go to Facebook, Sports Treasures TN. Caleb, give me some backdrop on Dan Lanning and Deion Sanders.
Okay, so starting with Lanning and Sanders, they're not as much going at each other. It's more about people going at Dan Lanning for what he said about Colorado. So, for those who didn't see the pregame speech, Dan Lanning said, They're fighting for clicks. We're fighting for wins, which I always joke was hypocritical because Oregon is literally built their program based on clicks with the jerseys. But sure, whatever. He defended himself afterwards, basically talking about like, you're taking a 15-second clip and saying he respects Deion and things like that. But Colorado turned out to be doing a lot of trash talking before the game. They did something Georgia did to Tennessee in 1999, which is Colorado players went to midfield where the O is, and like started dusting on it and like scratching it and jumping on it. You had some players trash talking, saying, I think Shador Sanders, or was it Deion's other son, that basically said, they were going to knock you out, and then that player got knocked out of the game. And so Oregon released a video on Tuesday, a 5-minute video just bragging about how they shut down Colorado. And in it, they included all the Colorado trash talk before the game, which led to Dan Lanning saying they're fighting for clicks, we're fighting for wins. So
okay. Let me ask you this. In the end, Deion was talked about. So what down, Coop?
Coop here. First down.
We're talking about it. Did Deion win that verbal battle just because we're talking about it? He didn't win the game, but we're talking about it.
I don't think he won the verbal battle. I don't think he lost it, though. I don't think it hurt Deion. I just think it helped Dan Lanning and Oregon. I think it helped Dan Lanning and Oregon to say, hey, we're here too, and we're running the show right now. And now you got, for the record, also to defend Dan Lanning, is no different than Tennessee back in the day, and they probably still do, saying we don't give a you-know-what about the whole state of this program that we just beat us from. So.
I think Deion believes that any publicity is good publicity. I think he believes that he won that battle, and I tend to agree with him in the PR sense. He came out and he was very smart about the way he said that his players didn't play like he thought they would, but that's all on me as coaches. It wasn't like the butcher throwing his players under the bus. I say Deion won that battle. Second down, Coop.
Cooper Mays here. Second down.
All right. Give me the next situation where we've got some Lou Holtz talk. By the way, I believe the only one of 5 coaches to dog cuss me is Lou Holtz.
I've tried to do a picture with his accent. Can you do a Lou Holtz impression?
I can do a little bit. So after the interview, I didn't know that he just had 10 minutes. So we went like 12 or 15, but a good 5 minutes of it was talking about his wife, and she was battling cancer at the time, and how I would keep him in my thoughts and prayers and that sort of thing. And at the end, I wish I'd have kept recording, but I hit the stop button. He goes, "This is just ridiculous." He said, "I said I had 8 minutes or 10 minutes or whatever it was, and you went 15 minutes. People just taking advantage, and it's terrible. And this is awful. This is what's wrong with media." And I can't remember if he actually cursed or not, but it felt like he did. So what's going on with and I couldn't understand what he said. Lou is such a great guy. He could whip anyone's butt. No, he couldn't. I could take Lou Holtz. So, and I could at the time. So what's going on with Lou Holtz?
Okay, so Lou Holtz last week ahead of the Notre Dame Ohio State game, and we know Lou Holtz is a Notre Dame homer, but he said Notre Dame
would have never left Notre Dame if Randy Moss could have gotten in school, for the record.
I could see that. Said that Notre Dame's the better football team. He said they're the tougher football team. Ryan Day came out after the game, and the first thing he said, literally moments after Ohio State won. By the way, Notre Dame was the tougher team in that game. Ohio State was lucky to get that win, and I think you agree with me on that, Dave. Like, Notre Dame was the tougher team in that game. They just were poorly coached at the end of the game.
I agree.
And
Mookie Mountain Red said, I would have replied, F off then, Lou. Honestly, it's one of those moments that you have a great comeback like 2 minutes after. And I had that comeback, but I was so stunned I got cursed by Lou Holtz that it kind of took me off my game. Go ahead.
Okay, so what happened is Ryan Day said, "I'd like to know where Lou Holtz is right now after the win." He said, "What he said about our team, I can't believe. This is a tough team right here. We're proud to be from Ohio. It's always been Ohio against the world." By the way, I also hate it when people say that. You're Ohio State, you're a blue blood. It's not you against the world, okay? Stop. I hate when people, it's like when the first round draft pick plays well and they're like, "Nobody believed I could do this." No, everybody believed you could do it. Just shut up, okay? But that always annoys me. But Lou Holtz came back and said that's his choice. He doesn't want to talk about Michigan because he's 0-2 against Michigan. He's a great coach, which he's not 0-2. He's won a couple of games. He's done a great job, but Lou Holtz then pointed out how the flow of the game went and that Notre Dame was the better football team and more physical in the game. So Ryan Day, Lou Holtz going at it. Dan Lanning firing his team up, saying Colorado's all about clicks. Dion being Dion. You just got a lot of chirping going on in Colorado.
I love it.
You know?
So in second down, I ask you this question. Lou Holtz, was he the worst college football commentator in the history of broadcast? The answer is yes.
I mean, there was another Notre Dame coach who I wasn't as big of a fan of, who followed him, his successor, Bob Davie.
Oh, God, he was bad too. But Lou Holtz was everywhere. So that was the problem. He was everywhere, and he was bad.
I agree. He was respected for his coaching stops. He's kind of and got one national title out of it, which congratulations. 1988, you got your one national title. But I mean, yeah, he's kind of seen as some sort of Mount Rushmore coaches, which he's not.
But good gravy. If you saw that team that played in Neyland Stadium and the talent they had and the miracle at South Bend, he should have had 2 or 3 national championships. He's kind of along those lines of who was the coach who just had one we were just talking about yesterday that should have had more? If you remember, tell me. What down, Coop?
Tennessee center Cooper Mays here. Third down.
Ryan Day, is he insecure? And should every coach be insecure that coaches one of the premier programs in the nation? Because there's not a great football team right now in the nation, period. End of discussion. There's not a great one. Every coach should be insecure. There is not a great football team that's dominant right now.
I think a little bit of insecurity, you're right, exists in every coach and should. I think that I don't want to say you should tune out the noise. I think coaches, I hate it. I think it matters that I think it helps coaches to take, what's that old school thing? Tune out the noise and focus on what you can do. How did Michael Jordan become the greatest player ever? He did not tune out the noise. He used the noise as a motivating factor for him to take things personal.
Sure. Yeah, but he also didn't say it publicly though.
Oh no, he just said it to their face, in the game.
Yeah, and he said it behind closed doors. I think to come out and say it like Ron Day did, I think he's insecure about his team.
Oh, I agree, because he's worried that this is the only way he can get headlines as opposed to actually winning a national title.
Well, and forget
kind of
the quarterback he had last year,
CJ Stroud.
I think he was a little bit better than you and I particularly gave him credit for.
He's looking that way early in the NFL. But I mean, how many quarterbacks have we seen look good their first 2 weeks in the NFL? And then,
I agree. I'm not completely jumping off my CJ Stroud is average bandwagon, but I'm got a foot off. Let's put it that way. By the way, Tennessee Cider Company, the original cider company, before we get to fourth down of the Smoky Mountains, use the promo code HAT to receive some free swag. You can order almost anywhere in the United States. And if you use the promo code HAT, you get a free hat to go with any order of the delicious cider. And we're working on having a cider named after me. I think that would be cool. Just an off the hook cider. Wouldn't that be sweet?
A Hooker cider would be great.
Yes. I've had a Hooker sushi roll, and I've had a Hooker margarita. So I think this is the next step in the progression. I think it's a natural. Fourth down.
All SEC center Cooper Mays here. Fourth down.
Would you like Josh Heupel to be more of a talker? Because yes, I would. Bleep, yes, yeah. I would.
Yeah, I'd like a little Spurrier in him. Just Heupel. Because here's the thing with Heupel. You bring it up. He exudes cockiness, even though he doesn't say anything. He exudes cockiness and confidence more than most coaches. But it's a weird thing because Spurrier exuded it, but then Spurrier had his mouth, and so you kind of knew that he was a little cocky. But
Josh Heupel's like James Bond. James Bond comes into a room, and he has competence. He could take most everybody in the room. And not fighting, but from an offensive schematic standpoint. But he's just quiet. Josh Heupel. That's how he is. And he doesn't come out and call people out. He takes the brunt of it. He says it's my fault. I'll fix it. He doesn't throw his players under the bus. He is the James Bond of college football coaching. What about that analogy? You didn't see that one coming at the 3:45 a.m. production meeting, did you?
No, that's a great one. If he's the James Bond, who's the Austin Powers? And I mean, a total goofball who's treated as some sort of genius.
Shane Beamer.
No one's sitting there saying when Shane Beamer speaks, I listen. No, I'm saying like, because the whole joke was Austin Powers had no swag, but was getting all the girls. It was a spoof off James Bond. So who is the guy that is treated with reverence and doesn't deserve it because he's a total like just
I don't know. Let's get on the message board. Who is that guy? Okay, yeah, who is that guy? It's not. Oh wow, I hate to say it. Rest in peace, but it might have been Mike Leach because I don't think he was an offensive innovator. I think he copied an offense from Hal Mummy and ran it and wasn't very flexible. But I don't want to talk about those that have passed away. Lane Kiffin, I would disagree. I think that he is adjustable. I think he has changed his offense over the years. I think it's Shane Beamer being a goofball with all the nobody looks at him.
Nobody in the media is like when Shane Beamer speaks, I listen.
They did 2 SEC media days ago because he dropped all the, he came out with the gold chain and the picture, the eyeglasses and all that stuff. So they kind of did.
Oh, wait, I got one. Could it be Bobby Petrino? Whenever he talks offense, we listen. But his offense haven't been that good.
Yeah, and he's got a penchant for the ladies.
He does. And then also, I would say, I don't know if this would have applied 7 years ago. I don't know if it applies now, but there was a point Chip Kelly was in this list.
Chip Kelly's odd to me because I think he was like Hal Mummy and Mike Leach. I think he was ahead of the game, but then didn't adjust. So, yeah, I think he's very similar in that he was way ahead of the game, and then the game caught up to him, and he didn't adjust. Gambling picks are right now, and they're brought to you by our friends at Zen Sports. Also, Chattanooga Mortgage. Congratulations. Your home search just got easier. Buying a home in Chattanooga has never been easier than Chattanooga Mortgage. Go to chatwith2tsmortgage.com. That's chatwith2tsmortgage.com. Also, shout out to our friends at Meridian Insurance, covering your world. I save like a couple of $100 a month. Are you paying too much for insurance? Probably so. You can click right below for a free quote. ShandaHasYouCovered.com. ShandaHasYouCovered.com. In these times where the inflation's crazy, an extra $100 or $200 in your pocket because of your insurance is a pretty nice thing to have. Gambling picks brought to you by Zen Sports are now Caleb Calhoun. So you get me started. If I agree, then it will be Hank Kingsley telling me, hey now. Or if I disagree, it'll be Tracy Morgan saying,
that's crazy.
All right, what do we got?
Well, first of all, 20-9 last week, guys.
Are you putting the glasses on? 20-9?
20-9. 2-1. We are 52-37 on the year. I am balling. All right, so let's go this week.
What is Caleb?
I'm your Huckleberry.
That's right. He is your Huckleberry. All right. What do you got? Get me rolling.
All right, so we got a Friday night matchup that's kind of intriguing, a top 25 one. It's Oregon State. It's Utah at Oregon State. Utah's 3.5-point underdogs. I'm going to take Utah to cover Utah plus 3.5 and the under. I've been betting against Utah for 2 weeks because Cam Rising's hurt. That defense is good.
No, I agree. And they're the most physical team west of the Mississippi.
Hey now.
So I will take Utah. All right. Kentucky, Florida, go.
Next one. Every model is saying pick Florida to cover and even pull the upset. I'm going opposite. And here's why. Dave, you've taught me about this. Florida practices at night. Kentucky practices in the morning. This is a noon game with Kentucky at home. Advantage Kentucky. And that's the advantage Florida had over Tennessee, by the way, with it being a night game. And so I'm going Kentucky to cover and win. And I'm going with the under because I think Florida's offense will just be a disaster.
Interesting one. I'm going to disagree.
That's crazy.
I think Kentucky's actually a better football team and will win.
Well, I said Kentucky will win. That was my point.
Oh, okay. Well, then
I said they'll cover.
Yeah, Kentucky covers. Sorry, go ahead.
Yes, Kentucky covers the 1-point spread and the under 44. All right. Arkansas, Texas A&M. Arkansas take plus 6.5. Go all in on this. Plus 6.5 Arkansas. This game is always close, and Texas A&M just lost their quarterback for the year.
Hey now.
It's an old Southwest Conference rivalry game. I think that means a lot to the fans. Doesn't mean a lot to the players who weren't born when the Southwest Conference was around, but they'll hear about it all week. So
Yeah,
I'll
and
roll
6.5
with
in favor of Texas A&M is insane. That's way too big of a spread.
Yeah, especially since they're going to slow down the clock. I mean, the two teams might not score 20 points combined. All right, and then we get to Auburn, Georgia.
Auburn is going to cover the 14.5-point spread, and I'm going to take the under in this one, 45.5, because Hugh Freeze's offense is not going to score much against Georgia, and Georgia's offense is not going to score much against anybody. So Auburn's covered.
I'm with you. Georgia plays down to competition. Texas, Kansas.
By the way, this is a top 25 game. Kansas is one of those basketball blue bloods undefeated, along with Kentucky and Louisville and North Carolina and Duke. But I got Texas covering the 16.5-point spread. They won this game last year, 55-14. They're at home this year, and they're better. And I think you take the over because I think the offense is going to roll.
I think Texas should be in the conversation of teams that could win a national championship. I'm close to that, so I will agree.
Hey now.
All right, Vanderbilt, Missouri.
All right, Missouri has 2 quality wins under their belt, the best resume in the SEC. Funny, but you know them. They're so unpredictable. Them going to Vanderbilt, and so is Vanderbilt. I feel like Vanderbilt will lose, but it'll be like a 1-score ugly game, and I'll take the under.
I hate to say it, but I think Missouri covers that number.
That's crazy.
So Tracy Morgan agrees with me. All right, what do we got up next?
All right, LSU, Ole Miss. LSU minus 2.5. I'm taking that all day. I think they blow out Ole Miss, and I'm taking the under 67.5 because Ole Miss scored 10 points last week. I don't think they're going to score that much more this week.
Hey now.
Frustration setting in at Ole Miss, and talking to some people around the SEC. The Rebels might be the disappointment team of the conference. Don't be surprised if that happens. And I think LSU has not played its best this year, which has gotten their attention. So I think LSU does win and win easily.
Notre Dame at Duke. My instinct.
I will say this: I would disagree with you on the under because I think LSU wants to add points and not necessarily to run up the score, but to fine tune that offense. Don't be surprised.
Oh no, I think LSU will score. I just don't think Ole Miss crosses 14 points.
Agreed. But I could easily see this. I could see LSU scoring 45-50. And I could see Ole Miss being in the 14-16 range.
If Ole Miss scores 16, LSU needs at least 52 to win to cut for the over. So
agreed.
Wow, big. You're betting on LSU huge on that.
I think LSU wins big.
All right, so my advice is don't bet this game, but by Dave's contractual obligation, I have to bet every top 25 game, so I'm doing it. Because I don't know, but it's Notre Dame at Duke. And I'm taking Notre Dame -6, but I'm taking the under because of Marcus Freeman's defense. But I don't want to bet this game.
That's crazy.
I'll take Duke. Big game on campus. Walking into a buzzsaw. I think they'll keep it close. I do love the under. Tennessee, South Carolina. Do we want to save that for last?
Yeah, we'll save it for last. That's fine.
Okay.
Right after that, Alabama at Mississippi State. Alabama minus 14.5, under 46.5. Alabama showed last week they're going to win with really, really good defense, old school. Think like a 27-3 game, something like that.
Hey now.
Agreed. Picks of the week, the ones that actually make you money. You've got 3. Tell me what you got.
All right, USC at Colorado. I did the under with Colorado, Oregon last week. I am the under 73.5 for USC and Colorado. Even if USC scores a lot, I don't think Colorado can move the ball on elite defenses. And I'm not saying USC's defense is elite, but it's good enough.
Hey now.
Hey now on the under, but
that's crazy.
I think Colorado covers the 21.5-point spread, which I know is not your key bet, but I think they'll bounce back and play better than most people think. Then Arkansas, Texas A&M.
Yep, all in, guys. Arkansas plus 6.5. This is the easiest SEC bet of the week. They're not going to lose by a touchdown to Texas A&M. It's not going to happen.
There he goes. He's feeling it.
your Huckleberry.
All right, Syracuse, Clemson.
This is the worst line of the week nationally. Syracuse is undefeated. They're welcoming Clemson to town. Clemson is 2-2. You know morale is low with that program right now. They've all but quit on the season to be out of the playoff race in September, and they just suffered a tough overtime loss. You think they're going to be up for this game against a team on the road that's in the top 25 and undefeated? I might take Syracuse money line.
There you go. All right. Lastly, we have the Vols. So let's talk a little bit of Vols and what you see of this game. I'm not going to give my official pick, but I will give you my pick in terms of what I believe happens in this game. So right now, the number seems to have settled at 12. Tennessee, a 12-point favorite versus South Carolina. The over is 63.5. You like Tennessee minus the 12. You like the over. Why?
I think Tennessee figured out some kinks on offense last week that they finally have realized how the best way to maximize Joe Milton's potential. South Carolina, we talk about how Tennessee hasn't been tested by elite defenses this year at all. South Carolina is still worse with their pass defense than maybe anybody Tennessee's faced this year. And that's crazy to say. So Tennessee should be able to air it out easily on South Carolina. I think South Carolina is going to air it out on Tennessee, which is why I'm going the over. So the difference, I think, is Tennessee will at least get a couple of possessions stopped on a pass rush where they can force a turnover here or there, which is why, I mean, Dave, I'm looking at like a 56-42 type of game for Tennessee to win.
I'm not going to give my official pick quite yet, but I will tell you, I think Tennessee will be able to control the line of scrimmage offensively, and that means a lot because they haven't at times this year. I think that I'm leaning towards Tennessee covering that 12, and I think that the Vols will play really well against South Carolina. I didn't feel confident they'd play well against Florida, but in the end, is Joe Milton going to have you picking Tennessee to win by 12 is based off one thing and one thing only. Joe Milton can't have a streak where he goes 1 for 8 or 1 for 6. If that happens, then South Carolina stays in the game because it throws off Tennessee's tempo and the rhythm completely. So basically, you're betting on Joe Milton, whether you like it or not.
Yes, and if he lets me down, he won't have to answer to me. He'll have to answer to Josh Ward's callers for 2 weeks because there's no game next week, and the Nico talk will explode.
Well, even if they win by 10, it's not going to, the Nico talk's not going to explode. But if he has the 1 for 8 streak, you think it explodes? If he has a 1 for 8 streak and
I'm not
they
saying
win
if
by 10.
No, I'm not saying if they, I'm saying if Tennessee, no, I'm not talking about whether or not Tennessee covers. I'm saying this is just, at this point, I'm talking win or lose. If Tennessee were to lose to South Carolina and Joe Milton has the 1 for 8 streak, I don't think he comes back from it. I don't think there's a possible way for Joe Milton to bounce back for that, Dave. I'm going to be honest.
Yep. Interesting. SC Scout guy, and we love his input, says, I think South Carolina is going to come out throwing and attacking that secondary fast. I think the plan will be to score and score as fast as they can. Well, nobody says they want to score as slow as they can, but I do think Tennessee's secondary is vulnerable, and I think this whole game stressed on Joe Milton. I think it's incredibly simple. He's Caleb Calhoun. I'm Dave Hooker. Those picks brought to you by our friends at Zen Sports. And I will tell you right now, Zen Sports is the new sports book in Tennessee, revolutionizing the way you earn sports betting rewards. That means no more deposit bonuses that turn into deposit nightmares. You got to check out Zen Sports. On Zen Sports, what you see is what you get with their cash rewards program. You get a lot of cash for a welcome bonus, earn an unlimited 5% cash back on your betting volume for your first 15 days when you sign up with the promo code HOOKED. That's HOOKED. Unlimited 5% cash back. Keep betting, keep earning with up to 3% cash back on your betting volume every month. After that, refer friends to earn a percentage of their betting volume. That's cash rewards too. Zen Sports, bringing the cash back to Tennessee. So if you bet big on sports, you want to be betting on Zen Sports. Zen Sports betting just got better. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-889-9789. Must be 21 or over. And in Tennessee to bet. This has been a presentation of Off the Hook Sports. We appreciate you. Like, subscribe, turn your notifications on. Leave us a review as well on the Spotify and the Apple and all that good stuff. And thanks for being a part of our program, which airs live at 10 a.m. Monday through Friday. For Caleb Calhoun, I'm Dave Hooker off the Hook Sports.